Coming to you from the HagmannReport.com studio, located in the Keystone State, birthplace of a mighty nation, it's your host, Doug Hagmann.
Welcome to Hagmann. This is the Hagmann Report, where truth can't be silenced. Never have I been more assured and sure of myself. Truth can't be silenced. Not today, not on this platform, not ever. I want to welcome all of you this evening to the Hagmann Report. Websites to the truth include HagmannReportLive.com, HagmannReportLive.com. That's where you can find the videos, the audios, everything, all right? Popular segments, which, if you'll notice, yesterday's in studio appearance by Russ Dizdar is going up live, or is going up on the popular segments. HagmannReportLive.com, HagmannReport.com as well. I want to also let you know, Friday, this Black Friday, 48 million Americans still have holiday debt from last year. Don't be one of them. Don't be one of them, okay? Now, having said that, let me go back to Russ Dizdar for a moment. We are doing things on the ground in terms of fighting human trafficking. Before I bring my guests on, Steve Quayle, Mr. Gary Cole, I want to let you know that HagmannStore.com is open. We're opening up today. And here's the deal. We have coffee. Detective's Choice, Patriots, Revolution, blends of coffee, different coffees for your different needs. K-cups to beans to ground. Why do I bring this up in the same paragraph as Russ Dizdar? Is because portions of the profits, significant portions, are going to be used or being used to help fight human and child sex trafficking. That's right. Detective's Choice, double of caffeine. Get your box of K-cups, whole bean, and ground, whatever your choice might be. By the way, I spent probably 3 months getting it the way I really like the taste. So there it is, HagmannStore.com. All right. I don't want to keep my guests waiting. We are having some issues right now on the getting them. Okay, we've got the guests, just the video. So if you click your video buttons, gentlemen, Steve, you're good. Mr. Cole, your video button on your Skype. I'm not sure. I'm gonna bring you on, my friend. Oh, hang on, hold on. I'm getting messages from Eric. We'll do it live. Remember that video? We'll do it live. All right. Or the other side. What's that hammering? Who's hammering? Craziness in my ear. Okay. So anyway, it's a great show lineup. Great message. The first hour is going to be just fantastic. Again, Steve Quayle, SteveQuayle.com. By the way, I want to make an announcement. This will be our last. This will be our last live show before Thanksgiving. We are engaged. We're going to be engaged in an operation tomorrow evening. A police detective's going to be. We're going to be joining, or a police detective is going to be joining us, or we're going to be joining a police today. However you want to phrase it. But there's going to be an operation taking place tomorrow night. And no, I can't tell you about it. I wish I could, except to say that it's related to something that happened earlier this year, if you know what I mean. I'll just leave it at that. Steve Quayle, SteveQuayle.com. By the way, if you haven't done so, go to his website. It's the Q Files. Now look, it's behind a paywall. And I was talking to Steve earlier today, and he said, we're going to have to go this route. And you're right. And he's right. We are all going to eventually have to go behind or on some proprietary base. Because let me tell you something. As I say, the truth can't be silenced. They are trying to silence the truth. And they're doing so through all sorts of active measures. And I use that phrase intentionally. So I would like everyone to visit stevequayle.com and sign up for the Q-Files 2.0. Please do that. All right. Thank you. We're going to bring Steve Quayle on. Steve, thank you for your patience.
Well, thank you, Doug. Do you have me now?
We got you, brother.
Okay.
Looking good.
Sorry about that. I just, I want to get my screen fixed up for Eric. Tell me if this is okay.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, today, first of all, I want to start out by thanking all of you who have waited for the Distant Thunders DVDs, which will be shipping next week. What we're going to talk to you today about is what went on in the background, because you have a right to know. And I have sent out to everyone who has, unless somebody's escaped us, send me your emails at stevequayle.com. Steve's, what is my email? I'm sorry, steve777 at stevequayle.com. And we'll get you a limited time Vimeo link so you can watch the Distant Thunders DVD. Now, Doug, this is pretty critical because you were just opening up in your monologue stating that we're all going to be silenced. They've cut us down. First of all, people better understand something. The economic attack, the financial attack on the truth is under full speed ahead. The truth will be silenced. I'm sorry to say that. I'm even in quoting Jesus said that the night comes when no man can work. But I wanted to bring Gary Cole on because in my opinion, of all the things I've ever done, I've never felt such personal frustration in trying to get a project out. And when you hear the background story on what went on to bring Distant Thunders, the government agencies' interference with it, the threats, intimidation against Gary and his family openly in public places. And he's been advised by counsel not to name names, and I think that's very wise, but we will be specific. Those of you who have heard me allude to it, now you get it from the mouth of the guy that had to go through it. And by the way, when he was editing, Gary would send me GoPro shots of the lightning storms in Florida where he was at. And Doug, they were off the charts. So this has really been fought with. So I'm going to let Gary tell his story, and then I will chime in when necessary. Gary Cole, ladies and gentlemen, the director, the writer, and the editor of the Distant Thunders DVD, which now is available. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you, Steve. It's awesome being here. Can you hear me okay there?
We can.
Great. Can you see my video? Oh, good. Yeah, it's been quite an adventure. I've been doing this for 30 years, and never in my life have I gone through this Indiana Jones type escapade adventure just to get a project done. But now I understand when you're doing something to expose anything dealing with conspiracies that have any kind of relevance of truth, anything to expose the workers of darkness, anything to expose what's really going on in the spiritual warfare on a biblical text and biblical passages of what we've been covering in this documentary. For the first time, I realize now that there is wickedness out there that will stop you. And I just want everybody to know out there as a viewer from watching the Hagmann Report and Steve Quayle for a couple of years, you always go in the back of your mind, man, is what they're talking about real? I mean, is there some real modicum of truth to this, or is it just hype for fear-mongering? I assure you, as a listener and now working with Steve, and it's not Steve, okay? It's not because of Steve Quayle. It's because of the message. And it's because of the timing of the message of what we're trying to warn people about this great deception that's coming that is spoken of in Revelation 11 and Zechariah. It's real. And if you really want to know, if you really want God to show you what spiritual warfare is all about, I challenge you, take a risk. Get out there and make yourself public, and you will put a bullseye on your back. As I'm sure you know, Doug, you've gone through your warfare, and so has Steve. When you take a stand for anything and you become any kind of a public figure, or you start to become a public figure, it is vicious. I mean, it is relentless. I mean, would you not agree with what I'm saying here?
Gary, and it's not past tense, it's present tense. Yes, it is absolutely vicious. And people need to understand that, this is not talking about us. This is coming to everyone. And I think if you take a public stand, and I'm going to shut up now, but if you take a public stand, whether it be on social networking or whatever, you are actually putting yourself out there, not just for ridicule, but for takedown. So thank you, Gary. And we appreciate your work, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a labor of love. I really do enjoy doing the work. I'd rather do it for the Lord and for exposing the truth than being part of Hollywood. The last time I was on your show, I believe it was in June or July, I talked about my background with Hollywood and coming out of that fiasco, that literal cabal of satanic worship. And I've learned in the industry, you can't get 5 minutes of airtime. Doug and Steve, have you ever heard of Sherry Shriner?
Yeah.
Okay. I first heard her and I thought she was nuts. And then I heard different rappers that got out of the industry, and there is truth behind. You're not going to get anywhere in Hollywood. They would state that you're going to hit a brick wall, and if you don't sign in blood, literally become what they call the initiate, or what they would say you got gravy. If you're not in that little inner circle of, it's just going to sound crazy, but killing babies and being part of the, Pizzagate pedophilia farm out there that our government it's rife with. It's prolific with child abuse. And if you're not part of that and you don't participate in those rituals, you're not going to get the perfume deals. You're not going to get the commercials. You're not going to get airtime. You're not going to get a script. You're not going to be able to direct. You're not going to be able to work on films. And I'll give a good example. My good friend, Greg Sims, who did a wonderful job on the music. Doug, I don't know if you've even seen the documentary or heard the music, but
you're talking about, Gary, you're talking about the Distance Thunder soundtrack and the people that have downloaded on Vimeo. Doug was there at Branson, so he heard the music, and it was original to our project. So, yes, he has. I'm speaking for Doug because he may not know what music you're talking about. But for those of you who have seen the DVD Distant Thunders or were at Branson, that is the soundtrack that Greg Sims wrote and directed with Gary's input. So, Gary, get to the point, if you would, because I want people to understand what you went through, okay? Most people are aware of Satan and Hollywood and stuff. You came out of it. But share what happened when this whole thing started to go south with the, quote, nameless government agencies. Give the background on what you're, and again, Doug, because of the nature of even the phone call we had last night, the listening in, the multiple voices, this is real, people. This is not grandstanding. Gary, give what you went through and your family went through in whatever order, but the deal is, I think it's important that we just go straight to there. I don't mean to cut you off, but we only have an hour, so go for it.
And it's a party line out there, folks. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, after last night's discussion, Steve and I hearing voices on our phone the last two times as though you're flipping through a tuner on a radio station where you're going through all the stations quickly, and then all of a sudden this voice comes on, get off now, and then Steve and I were cut off. Steve's a witness to that. We were cut off. Was it 2 days ago, Steve, or 3 days ago, I got a call, said unknown, and they said, we can make you or break you, and boom, they hung up. And I'm like, what? Is this a joke? And I'm sweating like crazy right now. Doug, I don't understand how you guys get on here every single day. I feel like I got a scope on me. I feel like eyes are on the back of my head right now, and I'm a little nervous. I'm not making this up. After what I've been through over the last 6 months, I feel like, wow, dare I go outside? Dare I do another one of these videos? And fortunately for me, because I'm a stubborn ox, it just fuels me to keep fighting. And I will say, this whole thing started when the last broadcast we had, I don't know if you remember, Doug, there was a tremendous lightning storm that cut me off. Yeah. And it was loud. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Right out the windows here, it was like explosion after explosion. And since that moment, Steve saw the video, we've had crazy storms here. Now people go, oh, it's just Florida. No, I've been in Florida all my life, and I've never had how many hundreds, if not thousands, of lightning strikes over my area that I got on video. We can even send the link if people don't believe it. And that was just a couple nights after that broadcast. And so that started this whole, if you want to say, no pun intended, the Distant Thunders cascade of spiritual warfare. And what I've learned, I was at a mall. I'm going to not say a particular mall. I'm not going to say what agencies, but I was eating lunch with my parents and just minding my own business, talking about our documentary. And I was surrounded, and my parents were surrounded by 4 unmarked men, I'll say. And they said, are you Mr. Cole? And I'm like, yes. Can you please come with us? And they separated me from them and took me outside by their vehicles. And they asked me all sorts of questions. You know, Steve, do you want me to go into the details of what we talked about? The questions they asked about you?
Yeah, no, leave that out. And I think people get the feeling that they know and they pray for me and you, but I want you to share the man in charge. You need to lay the background. You had talked to your parents about your own project. Someone overheard you and dropped a dime on you to the cops. There's 2 points to this, Doug, the cops, local, and then the feds. We'll get to them later. The bottom line is, Gary, I want you to share what the cop told you about when you started telling him about Bible prophecy, etc. I think we need to narrow it to that because I want people to get it, okay? I want them to get it, and I don't want you getting lost in the story.
All right. About 2 months, maybe a month and a half before this whole incident, this whole public incident, somebody evidently overheard me talking to my beloved parents about the content we're putting in our documentary. And so if I'm talking to you guys right now and I'm saying, yeah, there's going to be uprising or there's going to be a world system to put people in concentration camps or whatever we're talking about, and somebody just sits down and they overhear just a part of the conversation, it could appear as though I'm saying I'm going to do it because they weren't part of the conversation from the beginning. So that's what happened. And somebody took my picture, notified the local authorities and the whole mall, and there's posters all over the mall of me. If you see this man, contact the police immediately. And a month and a half later, the police came up to me and they said, you look like this guy, blah, blah, blah. And I told them what I just said. They probably overheard me talking about our documentary. I showed them pictures and everything we're doing with my work. And the guy said, well, what do you know about 2 men that are going to come? And I'm like, 2 men, I don't understand. He's like, 2 men, we know that you're talking about 2 men that are going to come and supposedly bring death and destruction to the world. And I said, are you talking about Revelation 11, the 2 witnesses? And that really set them off. Not in an anger sense, but they got very, very antsy. Very antsy. And that's when the other 2 went in and started questioning my parents separate from me. As local authorities will do, they'll separate you to see if the story is straight. And everything I stated, my parents confirmed when they were talking to the other police officers. They were very cordial. They weren't threatening. But Steve, if I can, I'm going to go back to the beginning with the Hawaiian shirts.
Okay, yeah.
Because that happened a month before then. And I was at a coffee shop. I'll leave it at that. I'm trying to leave names out of this. And I was at a coffee shop, a local hangout where I do work. Every night I do my writings there. As a matter of fact, that's my first phone call and contact with Steve was at this coffee shop. And all of a sudden, I'm just sitting there minding my own business, working on this outline for this very documentary we're talking about. And 3 guys came up to me dressed in Hawaiian shirts. And I thought, okay, they're wanting a table or something, you know. And they said, are you Gary Cole? I'm like, whoa, yeah. Do you know a man named Steve Quayle? And that's when I'm like, do I want to plead the fifth here? Do I want to get, and they said, we know everything that you're doing. We know everything about him. They started telling me things about Steve and his family, things in Peru that they couldn't have known if this wasn't real. Things that were going on in Peru, current times, even other prophecy teachers that I'm not going to name and implicate in this.
And by the way, it wasn't in Peru at the time they were asking about Peru, Doug. So they had misinformation, partial information, and then they jumped to the gun. And these were the nameless federal agency. Continue, Gary. I want to put that into perspective.
Yeah, they wouldn't identify themselves. The more I would try to get, and try to ask questions, they just kept hammering me. It felt like the X-Files. It was the most strange interview thing. And so I said to them, look, I don't know what you're driving at here. I'm doing a film. And they're like, yes, let's talk about that film. Believe me, I'm trying to remember it, because when you're like on the air, like now, when you're on stage speaking in front of people, everything becomes a blur, and you're like, did I really do that? Did I really have that discussion? So I'm trying to put the bits and pieces together as best as I can. But they were talking about the two witnesses also. And they said, we understand that you met with a doctor on the other side of Florida. I'm not going to mention his name. And this doctor disclosed to you technologies that we don't feel comfortable with you talking about. And they left that at that. And I brought up, do you not want me talking about A, B, C, or D? And they said, exactly. And they kept going around, dancing around the bush, because I think they wanted to know what I knew about that. But then they brought up the two witnesses. And I don't know why the agencies are so concerned with the two witnesses in Revelation 11. Obviously, in our documentary, we cover there's two camps of thought to who the two witnesses might be. It's either Elijah and Enoch or Elijah and Moses. And they're going to come for 42 months in this 70th week of Jacob's trouble, and 70 weeks of Daniel, the type of Jacob's trouble that is spoken of in Revelation and Daniel. And it's in the tribulation period, and they're going to warn of a coming abomination of desolation by the Antichrist. So I'm thinking, wow, this is incredible. Why do they care about these two witnesses? Are the government agencies looking out for these guys? Are they terrorists to the governments? And my mind was just racing at that point. I just kept going, how do they know all this information? And how do they know all this stuff that I've been talking to about Steve? They were telling me things about Steve and his family I didn't even know. Remember, Steve, when I called you and I said, did this happen to you? Did this happen to your family? And how would I know those things?
Well, and I want to straighten this out, Doug. Part of them is based on the antagonist and the lawsuit against us, and a lot of it had to do with personal stuff. And when at one point my wife traveled and she hiked, and I put a handgun for her because I thought she was going into the woods because of all the death threats against my family. Even that was brought out, Doug, by a certain person and her cadre. And so the deal is that, they obviously had looked. And for the record, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have felonies. I don't even know, forgive me, but not yet. But pretty soon we'll all be felonies. But here's the thing. What they were trying to figure out, and I got some clarification on this, Gary, is the two witnesses, they don't get the Bible. And I told Gary, remember, Gary, we see it plainly in the Word of God, but Jesus said it's hidden to them. So my guess is, Doug, they thought that, quote, are we the, and I want to make this clear, no way have I ever been to heaven. No way am I an incarnation. People have said that. I reject it. But what they're trying to figure out is what is the spiritual ramification on this. And not only was the technology that Gary was going to incorporate into, that cannot be incorporated into the film Distant Thunders, is that it shows invisible stuff. It shows principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness. It shows energy forces. It shows, for instance, if you were to look at, and this is real data now, I'm not making this up, if you were to look at Mars through a powerful enough technology, you could see that a certain asteroid and other asteroids aren't just in motion, they're in a form of stasis between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter on the opposite side of Mars that we can see. But the energy field of taking those and keeping them in stasis, or stationary is a better word, could be seen. So, and Gary, I want to make this clear too. We won't say any names because we didn't advise the other people under advice of counsel. But it wasn't me primarily. It was the people that were doing any kind of work in Peru, any type of other talk show hosts, other types of speakers. It was everything. So my take on this, Doug, simply is this: with no Sherlock Holmes involved, or, and all due respect to your profession of detective, or not detective, but private investigator.
Yeah, same thing.
The thing is that that threw them for a loop. So continue, Gary.
And before you do, Gary, I just want to say this to Steve and to the audience. Steve, you went a lot of places in that in that segment there. I would urge everyone to listen to all parts of what Steve said. Not to take anything, just listen to all parts of what Steve said. It's so important. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, it's they were telling me things I didn't know. I didn't know Steve had certain dealings. I didn't know about this about his wife. And when I was telling Steve this, I'm sure he's like, "What?" And I was in shock. I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where you're like, "Are you kidding me? Is this real? Is this really happening right now?" I felt I looked out the window and there was a mile-long UFO just hovering over. This was just so surreal. And so these guys came in, they kept grilling me, and they talked more about the two witnesses than anything. I guess, Steve, they think that they're terrorists of sorts. And I don't know how far down the Antichrist has his claws in the local authorities.
All the way, Gary. The whole world lies in the evil one. There is no place he does not have his claws. None. Settle it.
So I know I've heard all the stories about the Antarctic, the big pyramids. I know, Steve, you wrote a book called Pyramids Beneath the Ice.
Empire Beneath the Ice.
Empire Beneath the Ice. And I know that there's a lot of strange happenings going down there in the Antarctic because all these different world leaders are going down there, even past the peninsula that is very close to South Africa. And I believe it's very well possible, I could be wrong, that the Antichrist, at least the one who will be possessed by Satan, is already staged. I don't know exactly when the two witnesses are going to appear, but that could be at any time. As Dr. Chuck Missler in our documentary stated, time is imminent, and there needs not be anything to occur as far as signs and wonders for the Lord's return and for this happening. And so I do know that these two witnesses are going to be fierce. I mean, we stated in our documentary, they are going to proclaim what we know and believe, and I speak for many biblical teachers, including Chuck Missler, this great delusion, this great deception that if it were possible would deceive even the very elect, that this delusion is so strong, it's spoken of in 2 Thessalonians, because these people in the world would rather believe a lie, and because they would not hear the truth, they would not believe the truth, God himself is going to send them a delusion that they will believe. And there's a definite article, as Chuck would state, the lie. They're going to send the lie that these people are going to come and receive the mark of this wondrous being. And we don't know exactly what he's going to look like, but we do suspect, and it is very provocative with all the data that we've seen, that this could be an alien being, an angelic being of light. And we believe right now that the Pope is possibly the false prophet, either this one or the current Pope or the coming Pope. And that gets us into Tom Horn and Chris Putnam's prediction of the resignation of the Pope and what the Catholic Church is going to do to give power to this being. As a matter of fact, Doug, as we stated in our documentary, we do know that on Mount Graham, there's a telescope called the Lucifer Telescope. And this telescope, these astronomers that Dr. Tom Horn and Chris Putnam were invited to on Mount Graham can't see the star fields because these UFO entities block this Lucifer telescope. And openly and outright, the Vatican is expecting an alien visitor. Right now, the Vatican is rewriting scripture to be able to baptize and welcome in these saviors, these beings of light, to help us to move us along our evolution. And this is what we go into in the documentary. So Steve and I do feel passionately, we feel very strongly that we were harassed in ways some I'm not even going to mention, to not get this out there. As a matter of fact,
Gary, let me stop you too, because I think one of the most critical points of this whole thing today, Doug, is to tell people, do not talk in public about stuff that you're seeing or reading unless you're going to take your stand and talk about it. But here's the deal. Tell them what the head police officer said to you when you started talking about Bible prophecy and all that stuff. Please make that very clear and repeat it if you need to. This is what everybody who's listening to this show, not to scare you, but to tell everybody the lateness of the hour. Go ahead, Gary.
I was out there and I had my camera rolling because I'm like, nobody's going to believe this. I couldn't have the video on, but I held the phone way down and I was taking pictures without looking through the phone. And this police officer, who was a gentleman, kept asking me, so what's he wanted to know more about our documentary. He started writing things down. Yeah, I'm into that. I want to know more about this UFO stuff and your type of ancient aliens type of viewership here. And these two witnesses, tell me more about these two witnesses. And I said, I was going to tell him, you sound like the Hawaiian Shirts, but I wasn't going to be sharp. I don't want to invite any trouble. As anybody will know, and don't mention anybody's names nowadays on public, because people can literally sue you for anything.
Really?
We don't need any more trouble here. But he was grilling me about the Bible. They were going to watch the trailer at that time to our documentary, A Distant Thunders. And he wanted to know what these two witnesses were coming, what we knew about their plans, and what was going to happen to America. And I wasn't going to go full bore on this officer. I didn't want to get locked up here. We believe openly that America is kaput. According to the Bible, we can go down that road path. I don't know, Steve, if you want me to keep concentrating and talking about the intimidation and harassment.
I want you to, no, here's what I want to get specifically. Tell the people what the officer, Gary, told you about your kind of people, what they consider people who believe in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You run through that. That's what I want. I mean, that's got to be focused on this right now. And then we'll go, because again, we only got about 29 minutes left.
Wow, time flies. Well, basically, it was mentioned to me in the most amiable way that Christians, people who are against abortion, people, I think of Mark Levin with this, bless his soul, that are constitutionalists, are considered terrorists. That came out of their mouths.
And you were told that specifically by the head law enforcement officer from his mouth to your ears while you're being sequestered from your parents who are inside the mall restaurant being questioned, correct? Or inside
yes,
the mall?
It was a statement as a matter of fact.
Okay.
It was like a little side note, it was an addendum to what the real conversation was going on. And I could tell he sort of slipped with that, but I knew that the Hawaiian Shirts a month beforehand, we'll call them the Hawaiian Shirts, had the same sentiment. We'll call it the sentiment. And they view Christianity, people who are pro-life, definitely people who are anti-gay, constitutionalist, as a threat. And it's my belief, the way it was stated to me, it was like a matter of fact. Sky's blue, out of the blue. Here's the sky. It was like no big deal. And that came out. And it shocked me. Out of all the things that they said, that really hit me hard. Wow, we are here. We are in the police state. We are getting ready to lose our freedoms. And my belief fully right now, Putin has come out and said many times on CNN, I'm sure you've heard it, Doug, they want to take out America. He's threatened America. Not me. I'm not wanting to do this. That came from the head of Russia. And according to the Bible, Russia and China is going to attack America. And no better time to do that is when we have civil unrest in this country, or civil war, dare I say. And so these police, including the Hawaiian Shirts, made it very clear that they cannot have people speaking of such things, Christianity, even reiterating. It was tantamount to saying bomb on an airplane.
Yeah,
that's how I felt.
In essence, though, it's the biblical message. Here's, Doug, I think this is really critical. It's the biblical message that they must stop at all costs. The only way they can stop the preaching of the word of God is to kill those who speak it. This is why there's accommodation with the world. Friendship with the world is enmity with God. This is why there are so many people out there, I call them yappers and snappers, that are yappers and snappers. I actually call them jackals and hyena, which is an Egyptian board game 4,000 years ago, but it conquered this, or it basically illustrates it, jackals and hyenas. The thing is that I hope people are understanding what Gary said. Okay, Gary, now go to the second time the men in Hawaiian Shirts. By the way, I believe that was a little hello salute to me, because I was wearing Hawaiian Shirts, Doug, on my broadcasts during that time.
Yeah, and you want me to wear them. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I got news for you. You got your own targets on you for whatever reason. I got mine on me And, so I went out and bought a bright green neon. And I think this is a good time, Gary, too. Let me stop and tell people, thank you for praying for Gary Cole. Thank you, Sue, and your whole house of prayer for praying for Gary. Thank those of you who knew something was going on instead of saying to me certain expletives, where's my tape? Well, the bottom line is you're hearing the story. And just to clarify one thing, my wife had a perfect record, and she grabbed the wrong purse, got on an airplane. And I want to make this clear for the record. It was my fault. She was released of all liability. And yet the trolls out there, no matter what's ever happened, and, Doug, she landed in Albany. The people in Bozeman screwed up. Do you know how many people in Bozeman get onto aircraft with weapons? And then one of the quote officials, federal officials, said, she's from Montana. It's like freaking Australian football. There are no rules there. And by the grace of God, it was a fiasco. But that's what the story was, ladies and gentlemen. She had no knowledge. It was my fault. When I insist she goes into the woods, what's the word I want? I insist that when she goes into the woods or travels in Bozeman or in the woods, she used to hike in the, extreme hiking. She has a pistol with her. I lost a brother in the mountains of Montana to a murderer. It was all my fault. For all of you people that have feasted on that story of 2-3 years ago, that's the true story. But you know what, Gary, I've learned? Truth will no longer defend. It used to be, Doug, you know this in investigative work and law enforcement, truth is your best defense. That no longer exists in America.
Sadly.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. It almost seems, Steve, like you're trying to defraud the United States of America. Go figure.
Oh.
But
ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to that. But Gary, tell about the second thing. Oh, one last thing. Thank you for continuing to pray. I doubt very many of you would keep it together if you had a predator, an armed predator, a UAV over your head at 100 feet. I doubt many of you could. The only reason I can is knowing until the Lord calls me home, I'm not done. And by the grace of God, I have seen it. Even after Branson, Gary, I'll say this. After Branson, we had 5 different agencies represented at Branson that I know of. Somebody in another part of the world was able to see the transmissions, basically saying, do you know what these guys are talking about? What do we do? And they were told to stand down. Because I don't think, Doug, people understand, when it's just your life and my life and Gary Cole's life. I saw what it almost did to Gary, you guys. It almost destroyed him. And Gary, let me speak to this because I've been there too. I doubt many of you hypocrites and you keyboard assassins know what it's like that when you're basically being told, shut up or die. I have, Doug, you have, Gary has. I doubt many of you keyboard assassins have ever had to go through it. And I doubt, Doug, many of those people will stand in the presence of Lord Jesus when they're welcomed into the presence of God unless they repent. So, Gary, go immediately to the second group now, okay? How much time was there separated between the 3 Hawaiian shirts? Trust me, they weren't the Hawaiian, they weren't the Hawaiian punch bunch, okay? Go ahead.
Well, from the Hawaiian shirts encounters to the local enforcement, I would say it was a good 4 months. And now that I really think about it, the Hawaiian shirts occurred right around the time that the first report of this individual who reported me at the mall occurred. Remember, Steve, how I was fascinated? It took them a month just to get back to me. And so now that I really put it on the timeline, this linear timeline, that was around that time period. And so that makes sense to me. Right after the Hawaiian shirts, we had a massive explosion where I hang out. There is a gym. I'm really trying hard, guys, not to mention names. You mention names so carelessly, and I'm really trying to pay attention to my words here. And I used to go from this coffee shop, and I'd hang out at this place that was right by a restaurant I used to hang out. 1 hour after I left there at 1 a.m, I got word that there was a massive explosion. And they said it was a gas leak. Okay. Let me ask you guys something. When there's a homicide, and this is going to get to where we're talking about, Steve, when there's a homicide, you don't have 7-foot fences with 4 police patrol cars with their lights on for 5 weeks preventing people in that area. So why did they do that with a gas leak. And I'm not lying about this. For 5.5 weeks, there were constant 4 patrol cars with the lights on, sandbags and fences around that whole plaza area. You couldn't even get near there. And this place was gutted. I mean, it was gone.
This was post-explosion?
Yes. They don't treat homicides that long.
No.
So
No.
why would they do that with a gas leak? And I asked another officer from a whole different agency. He's like, no, I am not at liberty to say. Folks, I believe that was something other than a gas leak. I'm going to leave it at that.
Yep.
And so that's when I went to the mall about a week after that incident, 2 weeks. And that's when I had the first encounter with the local authorities. Well, I told Steve all about this. I know Steve believed me because he couldn't possibly knew I knew this about his wife. I'm not psychic. All these things I was telling him about other guys involved in this Peru thing that Steve wasn't even in Peru. But just put a long story short, I didn't know the things beforehand that these guys were telling me.
And
So
I can validate that because I never spoke to Gary about that, Doug. And let me share this. And because look, I'm trying to be as upfront as I can be, but what their interest was in the Peru and everything had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me. And for once, gee, it's nice to have somebody else in the focus. But the point is that they were fishing. That means they didn't know everything they thought they knew. But Gary, again, after the second batch, I'm talking now the Hawaiian Shirt guys, this nameless agency, were they, did they become more threatening? I mean, obviously they drilled you on the 2 witnesses, meeting 1, they drill you on, me, my wife, blah, 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 meeting 2. And, this whole thing, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this clear, didn't start because of Gary and I doing the film. It started because someone overheard them in the mall. When local cops get a report like that, it goes into the crime computer, and the feds are notified immediately through DHS and fusion centers. Fusion centers have control of all incoming intel and data. So that's the background on that, Gary. Again, listen, when I talked to you after the second time, you basically didn't even believe you could finish the film. You were beside yourself. Let me share this. I have been to the point where I've despaired unto death. I know what it is personally. I can say that's where you were at.
Oh yeah, I remember the conversation with you. I said, Steve, I was just at my favorite nightly diner. I'm not going to mention the name of the diner. And I saw 2 state police that were canine units come and sit down next to me. This diner is empty at 2 a.m. Steve and everybody that knows me, I'm very nocturnal. I do my best creative work. I'm sure Eric DeTech can agree with this. At night. A lot of creative people like to work at night. They don't get bothered by anybody. And for me, my creative work comes best at night. So that's when I was working on this. So I'd go and take a break, go to this diner at 2 a.m. Been going there since I started my trip to go out to visit Steve with a Dr. Paul, that I'll leave it at that, back in January. So all this time, this place is empty. So out of 70 seats, these 2 state police dressed in green camos happen to sit right next to my table and none of the other tables in the restaurant at 2 a.m. And they left. And then the next day, guess who appears again, asking me questions. Now, it wasn't as threatening, but it went back to the 2 witnesses. And they asked questions about the 2 witnesses, but mainly about Peru. And then they started telling me.
Was this the state police now, or was this the
Hawaiian
Shirts
guys? The state police didn't say anything. They just kept looking at me like what's going on here? Can I even enjoy my eggs and pancakes and be left alone? No, not at 2 a.m. So I called up Steve the next day. I said, Steve, I am not finishing this documentary. I'm not going to do this. I feel like my parents and I have been threatened. I feel like I'm going to die. I'm just going to say it like that.
That's
Steve,
true. Yeah, that's true.
I told Steve that 2 occasions. I said, Steve, I'm afraid to give you. Doug, I want you to understand, there is 25 minutes on this documentary missing from a very well-known Nobel Prize winning doctor who worked with the CIA. That I will name because that's not a threatening thing. That's just a work. I'm not saying they threatened me. I'm just saying his past. And he told me things I believe he wasn't supposed to tell me. And I'm not saying that to accuse him. He didn't know. he wasn't supposed to tell me. And in some way, shape, or form, this, I will say, technology, they didn't want Steve or me talking about. And we're not going to say anything here. But they were very clear. They were very specific with me. So I had to go back and revamp the entire documentary, take all this out, which breaks my heart because I was going to go to the Branson conference, if you remember, Doug.
Yep.
And I was going to speak. You were going to buy me a steak, if you remember.
I do.
And I was going to speak. I didn't want to go. I did not want to go. And everything I was going to speak about was the subject matter they told me to take out of the documentary.
You were effectively muzzled. I mean, you were
Yes.
effectively silenced, right?
And I believe the only reason.
Gary, let me just speak here to your defense too. It really was triggered, in my opinion, on the isodual technology. And by the way, there are papers on the internet, so nothing we're talking about is a state-sponsored secret or there's classified documents. But here's the deal. The alien tie-in and the time of the alien conference, we had joked on your show, if you remember. Gary said, well, Steve, let's just put a telescope on the audience and I'll be in the back room and the virtual reality headset and we'll see who is and who isn't human. I said, I don't think that would be a good idea in a carry state like Missouri, because there'd be a lot of dead aliens and a big, how do you cover that one up? And I'm not saying anybody would kill anybody. I'm just joking. But they didn't think we were joking, Doug. Do you get that now in retrospect, Gary?
Yeah.
Let me mention this. Yeah. And Steve, you said this about a week or so ago when you were talking about me on this very show. It was in the beginning of the show. And you made a statement, folks, that's no big deal. It's happening to Gary Cole. No, it's coming to you.
Yes.
If you think for a second that it's just Doug and Steve and myself and all these other speakers sticking our neck out on a limb, no, we're just in the front of the line. We're just the heralds warning people that it's going to be you. And if you don't think so, you better get a rude awakening. I challenge anybody that's making fun of us right now, that is saying we're a bunch of kooks or making up stuff just to fearmonger. I challenge you to get on the internet and take a risk and make yourself public and talk about this stuff and really do your research and see what happens. I challenge you. If it's not the criticism, if it's not the end results, or if you survive the minefield of not having a lawsuit, as Doug, you've mentioned in your show before, and Stephen, just the craziest things. Like, I can't believe the things that people are even accusing you of. It's just so bizarre. And right now I'm shaking. I'm not shaking because of stage fright. I could sit here and talk all day. I am shaking on, oh my goodness, am I going to slip up and say something I shouldn't say? And I really believe within my heart of hearts, to the both of you, that first show that we had with you, Hagman, and I had a horrible camera. I was just unprepared. I'll call it the Distant Thunders show.
Right.
You could put a link up and have people go to that so they know what we're talking about. I believe that opened their eyes, because I believe that these authorities watch your show. It's not a conjecture. I know they watch your show.
Oh, yeah, so do we. Yeah, we know.
So any people, you got to understand, I was a listener. I was like you. When I first heard Tom Horn talk about triple helix DNA and spider goats and all this, I said, these people are nuts. They're like crazy, like Alex Jones or something. No. If you get yourself in public and you go out there and do research, because I'm a film director, I don't like to get in front of the camera. And in this documentary, I'm in nothing but in front of the camera. Doug, ask Eric DeTech if he wants to be in front of the camera for an hour talking with you.
No, he refused. Yeah, he can't. No.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, so I don't like it, but I do it because it's necessary. I feel like I was drafted. But I'm telling you, if you think you're sitting there sipping your coffee and having a nice little entertainment time on YouTube, we may not be on YouTube very long after December 5th or December 10th. I've been notified. A lot of people have been notified. We may not be here. You're not going to get your news source.
And Gary, let me interrupt this, because Doug and I talked about this. After December 1st, or give or take a couple days, all my YouTube, all of them that I have done, that doesn't mean Doug's shows on YouTube or Greg Hunter's or anybody, but my personal stuff that I've done will be behind my paywall, because I'm not going to allow some obtuse lawsuit to say that I said this when I said that or meant this. So it's really important. I want to make this clear now. After December 1st, there'll be one YouTube up saying if all of Steve's YouTube channel is now behind my paywall. If you don't like it, tough. Doug, you and I both know what we've spent in the legal fees in fighting the lawsuit that we've been under for 4 years. We're allowed to say it. It's a matter of public record.
Yep.
And the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, the lawfare, and I think somebody quoted that, or that's Doug's word that he used to apply on it. You cannot expect how do I say this? You cannot expect, equal justice under the law? Because the Bible talks about, now all you guys listen in for all the different agencies, lawlessness. You may hate Jesus, you ultimately hate God, but you can't deny that lawlessness. And now even stuff beyond their control and their awareness. You see, because Gary, I think this is the most amazing story from this standpoint. I hated that you had to go through it. Doug, I got to tell you something. It drove me nuts because I want to thank all of you people that were so patient. Bless you guys. But it drove me nuts because I deliver. And then it went on from 1 month to 2 months. But in the background, Gary Cole is dying. They're threatening him. I mean, it was total mental, psychological torment. And I got to be careful what I say so I don't push Gary over the edge so that he finishes, because that's important. Gary, share that.
Steve,
yeah.
Hang on. I just want to chime in with this. Gary, Steve was so concerned about you. I mean, we would have discussions about what you were going through. I couldn't say anything. Steve couldn't say anything. The people out there who were listening to this had no clue of what you're going through. I'll just say this. I'll back up because we have 9 minutes left. Just one thing, folks. You have no idea what Gary Cole has been through. You've got no idea what Steve Quayle and I have been through, but especially Gary, given the fact that, hey, it's almost like welcome to the party, pal. Minus the uppity,
Yeah.
So, okay, go ahead.
And Doug, I want to say this too. It's that important of a DVD. Look, it's not about selling the information that we get accused of. It's about teaching you. Gary was the last man to sit down with Chuck Missler. And if I didn't misquote you, Gary, please feel free to tell me. But Chuck's words to Gary were, he didn't think that, 98% is this correct, Gary? 98% of professing Christians aren't even going to make it to heaven. Isn't that what he said?
He stated in some interview material that in Revelation 3, and I'm going to answer that question biblically here.
Okay.
In Revelation 3, there's 7 churches in Asia Minor, and Jesus is basically doing a report card. And the last church is the Church of Laodicea, and he believed, as I do, that there's 7 literal churches, but they also can be symbolic of church age. And that's the one church that Jesus called the believer, the individual, to come out of. And we believe that to be the present day church, the church that Jesus spews out of his mouth, because they were neither hot and they were neither cold, but they were lukewarm. And when Jesus was speaking to that church, they were between 2 cities. One had a hot spring and one had cool spring water, mountain water. But in their city, they had this tepid, putrid, lukewarm water. So when he was speaking to the listener, the audience, they knew what lukewarm meant. Okay, and Revelation was written around 95, 96 AD by John the Revelator. And Jesus was relaying this directly to John as the author, and he stated clearly that because you are lukewarm, I take it because you are PC, because that's what we live in, politically correct, and you don't stand for anything. I would rather you be hot. I would rather you be hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. And he had a direct call to the listener to come out of that church. And that is the church age we are in. And Chuck stated very clearly, as I've heard other Bible teachers state, that it was his belief, and he told me this in personal, that a good 97, 98% of people in church aren't going to make it. Matthew 7:21. For many shall say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not done wonderful works in the name and cast out devils in the name and professed and prophesied in the name? And Jesus is going to look at him and say on that day, depart from me, ye workers of iniquity. I never knew you. And then he says, ye workers of iniquity. For many, I tell you, will say they know me, but few will enter therein. That's in the whole book of Matthew, chapter 7. So you have to examine yourself. You can't play games with God. This is about the Son of the Most High God, of Abraham. This is Jesus who is coming back. Folks, this isn't about Doug or Steve or me or the Antichrist, which means in place of Christ, or the two witnesses. We're the pawns on the chessboard. Okay, this is about Jesus reclaiming his authority on planet Earth, and these powers that be don't want him to return, especially this Antichrist satanic system. That's what this is about. And I challenge you. And Steve, let me just make this statement. It's very important that I make this statement, because this was going to be my last words at Branson. Chuck, if he was here right now, you know, he'd tell everybody, I'm going to tell you very clearly that this Bible speaks more about the time of which you and I live today than even all the other times of the Bible mentioned, including the time that Jesus Christ walked the shores of Galilee. And if you accept that absurd statement, you failed this test. He wanted you to go out and do your own research and draw from that reliable conclusions. And I challenge everybody, wake up. This is not a game. If you think I'm going through it, or Doug or Steve or Alex Jones is going through it, no. We're just at the front of the line and you're not far behind us. This is not a game. And I'm telling you, this documentary, Distant Thunders, goes into this warning about this delusion that's coming, folks. It's coming. And they did not want this to get out. And Steve and I can testify, Steve, am I exaggerating in any way, shape, or form?
Not at all. And Doug, I think people need to know that Distant Thunders is available for viewing on Vimeo right now. You can see the new poster with the 3 aliens on the front of it, the satellite dishes and 3 Nazis flying saucers, the Antarctica theme, and they can go there, stevequayle.com. And then the DVDs are shipping next Tuesday, and they're available for purchase too. But for all of you around the world that wonder what's going on in the United States, you need to see this DVD. By the way, the people that have seen it, you know that Gary's pro. Some of the finest animation and computer-generated graphics that I've ever seen anywhere. I mean, you can't knock it. It's that good. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to consider at this point registering for Branson in July, because it's critical that July is a busy time in Branson. This year, for those of you that sign up for the DVDs, we're going to give you all 3 of the True Legends DVDs, the documentary, The Unholy Sea, The Holocaust of Giants, and the whole thing about the pre-Adamic race. When you sign up on Gen6, GENSIX.com, and pre-order the DVDs, we send those out immediately. It's so important that we get, Doug, the information into the people's hands, because this year, and I do believe it could be ancient cataclysms and the coming catastrophes, the pre-Adamic era and the return to the days of Noah. And we're in the days now when men will not endure sound doctrine. We'll be talking more, we'll be sharing more. But ladies and gentlemen, please keep praying for Gary. Thank you for praying for me. Thank you for coming in imprecatory prayer against the enemies of Doug Hagmann, Steve Quayle, and Gary Cole, and others who are out there on the front line. We're not saying we're the only guys. We're just saying here are contemporary views into our lives, contrary to all the gerbils out there and the yappies and the snappies, the hyenas and the jackals. And until you have to check your car for bombs, until you have to go, wait a minute, I was just at that place that blew up, until you have to deal with hang-ups, we'll either make you or break you, until you have to deal with people threatening to kill you and saying, we see you, until you have to threaten for people putting your house up on the internet like they did mine and saying, send somebody to go take my picture with a flashlight, and then sanitizing that, and then, somehow that's a threat towards someone else that's got a complaint against me. The people that want us dead are as phony in their, quote, claimed religion as they slander us night and day. Gary Cole, blessings. I'm glad to put a face. I want you to know you must pray for this man.
Amen to that.
Gifted of God, but incredibly under the gun. And by the grace of God, Gary, you're alive. And I didn't think you would make it. One night, I never thought you'd make it to the following day. I called a group of intercessors. They prayed you through the night. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that pray, there's nothing trivial about this statement. I would be dead. I would not be doing what God's called me to do, contrary to everybody else's opinion. And Doug wouldn't either if it were not for your prayers, your support. And bless you. Please take a look at the DVD. Download it on Vimeo. Watch it over the holiday weekend. And the videos ship out next week to all of those that you have bought them. And we'll update you kind of as this thing goes. Gary, God bless you.
Thank you, Stephen, for your prayers. I cherish them and I hold on to them with my life.
Amen. And Gary, before you go, where can people go to get the? If this is the first time you're hearing about this, when I was saying, well, what's this all about? Where can people go for that DVD or the Vimeo stream?
The best place is what Steve mentioned is on stevequail.com.
Okay.
And they can go right to that direct link. And from there, they'll have two choices of watching it on a standard def DVD, or they can watch it on VOD in HD, which I suggest, because you see more of the information and the graphics that's relevant to what we're talking about.
All right.
That's video on demand.
Yeah, video on demand.
Steve, thank you. Gary, you've done a fantastic job, and I want to say,
thank you.
In addition to welcome to the party, I still owe you a steak.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that when we go to Branson this year.
All right, brother. All right.
Thank you so much.
Again, gentlemen, thank you so very much. May God bless each one of you. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. And remember, Jesus is the reason for the season, and without Jesus, there'd be no Thanksgiving.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
All right. Folks, that was Steve Quail and Gary Cole. What you just heard, holy cow. Look, there's no hyperbole behind any of that. I don't know how else to describe it. I witnessed all of this in real time with Steve. And when I say I witnessed it, I was part of it on the other end of the phone or getting the information or this, being updated as to what was happening. And I could not say anything. All right. So you may think, well, wait a second. There's no verification of any of this. Oh, yeah, there is. Oh, yes, there is. Do we have it? Yep. However, like a weapon, and if a country has a nuclear bomb, when's it most effective? When it's not used, when the threat of use is, sometimes the threat of use is more effective than the actual use. I'm talking metaphorically here, or allegorical, or whatever. I guess metaphorically would be the word. But so understand that there are people who want to, as I often say, shut us down, get us off the internet. And they targeted Gary like I've never seen anyone targeted before. So that said, keep him keep him in your prayers. In the program description box at HagmannReportLive.com will be all of the information. Now, before we move on, even with all the stuff going on, joybird.com/Hagmann. Let me draw your attention to joybird.com/Hagmann. I like my furnishings, my surroundings to be very me, just me, to talk about. I mean, to represent what I feel. And my wife feels the same way. She likes to have her space just exude her. Your furniture should suit your needs while also feeling uniquely you. So whether you're throwing a Thanksgiving Day party or just a birthday party or just having some friends over or just want to spend the night in with Joybird, you'll be doing it your way. With over 50 fabric and leather options, 3 shades of wood, and over 250 unique silhouettes. Just do the math. Joybird's got a lot to choose from. Now, with Joybird, your personal one-of-a-kind style should match your furniture. Bring your mood boards to life, shall we say, with hundreds of customizable pieces and over 50 fabric options. You know what, folks? It doesn't matter if you're a neutral beige kind of person or a bubblegum pink kind of person or remember the 70s orange? It doesn't matter. Whatever you can think of, Joybird can build it. If you need a certain sofa, like the one in my office, I've got to show you that because really, what a great piece of furniture, handcrafted. Each Joybird produced piece is made with the ultimate care and precision using real wood, minus the harmful chemicals. Responsibly sourced materials. I was thinking about the harmful chemicals. I was looking at something on the internet. And believe it or not, folks, there was a warning at the bottom of this piece of furniture, or at the bottom of the page about this piece of furniture, where it said that the contents contained harmful components. And I'm serious. And this is off of, well, where do you go shopping when you go on the internet? Okay, maybe I shouldn't say it. Joybird's not like that. Joybird gives you responsibly sourced, non-toxic materials, real wood. No harmful chemicals. And I was thinking to myself, not me. I mean, I was thinking, my goodness, a lady would jump up on that. And, I was thinking about my dog. I know that sounds weird, but you get where I'm going here? All Joybird handcrafted pieces come with a limited time warranty too. 365-day home trial. Skip the furniture store and bring the showroom home. You can sit on it, sleep on it, break it in. If you don't love your Joybird, return it. Now, here's the deal. Here's what my friends at Joybird have worked out with me. Create furniture that matches your own fearless style at joybird.com/Hagman. See how Joybird can help make your dream space a reality today at joybird.com/Hagman. Go to joybird.com/Hagman and receive an exclusive offer for 25% off your first order by using the code Hagman, HAGMANN. So that's joybird.com/Hagman. Use the code Hagman for 25% off. I guarantee you, you're going to love it. My wife does. Jackie, my daughter, does. Oh, Eric the Tech even nods his head. So there you go. Folks, one more thing. This will be our last live broadcast before the Thanksgiving holiday. Tomorrow, we are going to be engaged. Even Eric the Tech is going to be engaged in an operation that requires our presence actually for quite a period of time, and it's going to involve well into the program time, and it has something to do with what happened in the middle of the year. But let me tell you something, we're coming. So anyway, do me a favor, watch Patreon. I'm going to be sharing some information there to the best I can, the best of my ability, Patreon. And I hope to create some videos as well, some you and I time. And I want to thank all of our supporters of Patreon at this Thanksgiving. I'm going to hit my knees as I do every night, but especially thanking all of the people who support this broadcast, whether it's Patreon or PayPal or by mail. And by the way, I read everything. Can't respond to everything, but I read everything, and I thank you. And I know Stan Dale from standale.com, he thanks his patrons, members of Patreon. He thanks them as well. And folks, if you are looking for someplace to support, in the alternative media, Stan Dale, let me tell you something. You won't find a better person to support than Stan Dale. Stan and Holly. There it is right there. Stan and Holly Dale. Their work, I believe, look, I'm a member. My wife and I are members, that is, together. I believe it's second to none. And by the way, and I know I'm kind of taking some of Stan's time here, but Stan will never Stan won't say, please join me on Patreon. I mean, because he just doesn't. I mean, but somebody needs to and say, you got to support Stan and Holly Dale. And I really believe they're worthy of our support. But Stan's work product, to me, is unassailable. Well, unimpeachable might be the more accurate statement. And I just want to say that. So Stan Dale, thank you so very much. And I hope you and Holly have a wonderful Thanksgiving leading off that right now, my sentiment. And I thank you for being who you are, what you do, and Holly as well in your fur babies. Thanks for your patience, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's almost Turkey Day for some of us that are not involved in an action, but I understand, and I hope it works well.
Yeah, me too.
There are a lot of things to talk about today. I've gotten a lot of email about this show that Tom Horn did with the Gilberts on Skywatch TV about the Apophis asteroid, and the fact that Tom Horn did find this article and the paper, which I've downloaded and been reading, about the errors, the calculational errors that the NASA satellite, what's it called, NEOWATCH, I think it is, that has been cataloging all these near-Earth asteroids or meteors, some cases, using infrared, the heat signature. And the NASA program with the NEOWATCH satellite and the infrared cameras use statistical guesses about some of the data involved in the orbits and sizes of these asteroids. Now, this can be significant when you have a large orbit and an unknown spin of the actual asteroid. And as Tom Horn's report on the show said, this could mean that the Apophis asteroid that will come close, according to the official NASA estimate from the NEOWATCH satellite, it'll come close to the outer orbits of our stationary communication satellites around the planet in 2029. Now, the problem is that they use what's called the Monte Carlo method, the gambling method of probabilities of the size, shape, and variability of the orbit of asteroids, because there are so many asteroids out there with so many local gravitational fields and certain instabilities in the sun as well in the solar wind, that you can estimate, kind of guesstimate would be the thing, where the orbit will be in a year and 10 years and whatever. And the further out you get, the more error occurs in where you guess, because certain things can affect it that you didn't know about. Now, this asteroid Apophis is so close already in 2029 to impacting the outer layer of our satellites by their kind of pretty accurate guesstimate that anything between now and then that disturbs its orbit even slightly, because it's got a long way to go before we reach 2029, could make it either get further away or get closer to actually striking the Earth, which is a bit frightening when you realize that the data that NASA is supplying and Near Earth Orbit Project are supplying are their best guesses from the data, because they don't have enough accurate information out there on all these meteors or asteroids to be totally accurate. And they can't foresee certain things happening in the sun that might affect the orbits of these asteroids significantly. I know it means that you don't sleep well at night if you realize that this darn thing could hit us. A little glitch in its orbit 10 years out could make it just run straight into the Earth. Now, let's assume that it does strike us. Does that fit with biblical prophecy in the book of Revelation by John? Yes, there is going to be a burning star fall into the oceans, pollute the oceans and the waters and make them bitter with probably some metal salt of some sort in the progress of the tribulation period. So if that's in the last part of the tribulation period, then that would mean the tribulation period would start sometime around, instead of 2029, of 2022. If it's in the middle of the tribulation period, then the start of the tribulation period would be at like 2025. We're, like 5 years out, and instead of like, 3. So anyway, or 3 or 2. What I'm saying is we should factor this into the prophecies that were given to John about this age to let us know where we are in God's timeline and when all these things will come to pass and fulfill prophecy and lead to the destruction and the entrainment of Satan and his followers. So this is why this this Apophis asteroid and the accuracy of the data is important. The Skywatch are saying that it could be the wormwood spoken of in the Revelation of John. If you look at slides 43, 44, and 45, you can link to the discussion that Tom has with the Gilberts there on Skywatch TV. There's another one available on your show where Steve Quayle took over, a 2-hour discussion. I saw that you'd already covered that. But just putting my spin on it because of the emails I got, I'm adding to the information you've already supplied to your listeners. Slide 44 takes you to a program on NASA that allows you to run the clock backwards and forwards a day at a time, or years at a time, whatever, to see where Apophis is and where its projected orbit will be. There you go. And you can dial up the top right of the screen. You can dial in the factors you want and then push the right double arrow pointing to the right. You can hit that and it'll start moving the planets and the asteroids around. That's right, Eric, you've got it there. And there's another slide 45, which is just showing where our communication satellites are, the outer band, and where Apophis, according to their best guesstimate at the moment, will enter our the Earth system, Earth-Moon system. And you can see over there that it clips the outer edge of our satellite communications. Even though it looks pretty close together there, when you expand everything and put it in relative size, chances are Apophis at that point would just scoot in between our satellites, and about the only thing you might see is a slight wobble in their orbit caused by the gravitational field of this asteroid. That's based on what is accepted as the best guess, the mean path plotted by them. It's just too close to not pay attention to. Now, there may be others. They've found errors in calculations in this report. It's called an empirical examination of Neowise asteroid analysis and results, where they show not only is the change or the possible error in the Apophis asteroid, but in about another 100,000 asteroids that and meteors that they have plotted and put into the various reports. So with this potential error in all these things, and these are only the 10% that they've actually discovered, then the other 90% floating around out there, we don't even know where they are. So it'll be like the other day, last week or so, when we had one come by and it's, we just found one, it went by. That gives you a lot of confidence in what man's science can tell us. No offense to NASA and to the teams. They're doing the best they can with the instruments and the mathematics they have and with the knowledge of what asteroids and meteors that they can see, can detect. But just, understand that man's science is built upon a very kind of flimsy database. And we could be surprised tomorrow.
I think you do a nice job in supplementing the data that we receive. Frankly, I'm glad to have you as kind of I don't want to say a resident expert, maybe as an expert to turn to kind of go through all this. I mean, and all of the findings about this asteroid are consistent with your findings, correct? I mean, everything. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, this is something to be concerned about.
Well, not to be comfortable about, any of the near-Earth orbit plots that are given to you by NASA. Not NASA's fault. I certainly not blaming it. I know a few of the engineers. It's not their fault. They have time-tested formula and methods of calculating orbits, which I've used those equations too. But in the end, if they don't have accurate data as scientists, they can't give accurate results. And so you don't want to sit and be comfortable in saying, we're clear for 9 or 10 years, and probably after that, because NASA says so. You should read the codicil, or you should read the provision that says, as best we can estimate, and understand they aren't perfect because the data is not perfect. I cannot access their data. I mean, this is inside NASA and NeoWatch, and they take their data and they process it. I can say that the orbital equations that they use are complex. And they have the multiple body perturbation problem of multiple gravitational fields of objects affecting each other. And this has been a rather difficult solution for over 150, maybe 200 years for physicists trying to determine the effects of other bodies on other bodies that are affecting other bodies. It's a very interactive problem. So don't get comfortable. Understand that we could be seeing this, surprise asteroid impact tomorrow. We see evidence of that. This Apophis one, if this is the one spoken of as wormwood in the Revelation of John, is about maybe 1,200 feet or so in diameter, 370 meters. Compare that to the asteroid that I found that caused the Great Flood and shifted the surface of the planet around 128 to 130 degrees, hit off the coast of India, the Kodapi asteroid. That one, instead of 1,200 feet in diameter, was over 15 miles in diameter, traveling very fast. So compared to the Flood asteroid, this is a tiny one, but it's a big enough one to cause a lot of damage across the whole planet from tidal waves and orbital dust and all kinds of things that are byproducts of an impact of something that large.
So wear your water wings and walk around with a bicycle helmet on, right?
Yeah. Stay close to the Lord and live your life. Don't go in a cave and wait for it. If you're good with the Lord, you got to die sometime. And, if you're in his care and that's the time you're going to die, I assume it would be pretty quick. If you look at the scenarios, the videos they put showing that asteroid impact. Anyway, I wouldn't put that on my today list of worries. I'd just consider that, what has been said, it's not totally accurate, and get on with life. There are other things that we need to deal with here on day to day.
Amen.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. And I thank Tom Horn for bringing that to the attention. I didn't know the accuracy of the reporting until he said the report that he'd read, and I looked at it and I thought, good grief, he's right. I should have known that. Now, we've got a few other things facing us in the Middle East. In slide 47, the Israeli Attorney General tells Netanyahu, you can stay in office for now. Now he's got several, charges against him, like President Trump does, to try to kick him out of office. But even in his own party, the Likud party, I think he's got 80 to as closer to 90% support from his Likud members to retain the seat of prime minister in the Likud party, which is great news because, to let him stay in power like that's good. And you ask yourself, would the blue-white party, Gantz, would they be a good party to be in power under Gantz leadership rather than Netanyahu in a war with Iran? Now, the war with Iran is close. I mean, we've sent, aircraft carrier and fleets over into the Persian Gulf, or the Arabian Gulf, they call it now. We've got 10,000 troops over there landed now then to help Israel against Iran's attack. It is coming. They've said it's coming. They've given us warning. In fact, if you look at slide 40 and click on the text, you can look at the big picture if you want, but click on the text to go look at the article.
I just, while he's doing that, I want to ask you. I thought of this, or thought of you when I saw these show images. And isn't it interesting the parallels between Israel and the United States? And the second thing is, can you imagine this happening under the Obama regime in terms of, the war footing and what we sent over to defend Israel? I don't think that would have happened under Obama. I was just curious of your thoughts.
Oh, it wouldn't have. I mean, any president, of the United States that goes over into the Middle East countries, to the Arabs, and, bows down to local sheikhs and stuff and Arab kings over there is, in my opinion, a weak sister. He shouldn't be president. He's not the kind of president that we need at this time. He's too weak.
Exactly.
And, I'm entitled to my opinion, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, if we have that slide, there we go.
Okay. Now, Iran will destroy the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia if they cross Tehran's red lines. Well, let's kind of look back at what President Netanyahu found and revealed earlier in the year about all of the stuff they found and confiscated over with one of their spies there in Iran of what they were preparing in nuclear weapons at that time. And Netanyahu says, see that red line? They've crossed it. that was like 10 months ago they knew that. And now here we hear Tehran saying, if you guys cross the red line, we're going to take our Revolutionary Guards and head for, Jerusalem. And you know that the Quds Force, the QUD force, is the Jerusalem force under the command of General Qasem Soleimani, another Solomon, in Iran. And they plan to march straight to Jerusalem and take it over, destroying property and people as they go. Now, the United States, under our president and our military leadership, are over there now discussing these things and how to protect Israel against an Iranian attack, which Iran is so darn close in miles to Israel that the minute it launches these missiles, we've got to be able to take them down within 30 seconds. Detect them, locate them, plot the intercept course, and shoot them down. That's just for those. There will be ground forces that will apply other types of things to hurt Israel. But this is going to be a war, a very short-lived war, and I suspect, Israel and the United States with it will have to protect themselves there, and our troops and the Israelis, from this attack. And it will be a violent protection, which I suspect will see tactical nuclear weapons used against Iran to stop their tactical use of weapons against Israel and our forces there. If that happens, the Middle East will erupt in a cry of, "Oh, hold the script here just a second. We can't have a nuclear war spreading through the Middle East and into the rest of the world over this. Let's get Israel together and let's talk peace. Let's control these nuclear weapons exchanges." And I think that's when the peace treaty that the Antichrist endorses or ratifies will be signed by Israel and several of the Arab nations around. Anyway, wow. It's just coming so close to fruition, that whoever signs that pact, that ratifies it, there will probably be several of them, but one of them is going to be the Antichrist that will be revealed.
Wow.
So anyway, that's
Serious
why
times.
It is. Well, in slide 41, there's another link to an article there where, the former Brigadier General Hamovitz, former IDF Brigadier General, said Israel has to prepare for an attack from Iran. And this is open discussion in the press, which tells Iran and its supporting proxies, through, say, on the Levant there, to get ready because we're going to fight back. And this was released today, this article, publicly stating to the enemies of Israel, they'll hang on, batten down your hatches because we're coming for you as well. The Lebanon is an asset, Syria is an asset to Iran. It's becoming very clear that the situation is leading up to that exchange, that it's going to make the world cry out for, a peace treaty. Anyway.
Wow. Yeah, and you know what, folks? By the way, to follow along, and I've gotten an email about this. Go to standeo.com, click on the show images page, and then just go through and you see the picture and my picture go on, and you'll see the show images right there. Very clean, very very easy way to access the show images page. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm just giving you a bit more light there. I could see here in your thing, my levels are dropping on your screen. Okay, there we go. That's better. Another kind of interesting thing, which is not war or anything, but slide 42. Up in the space station, some of the astronauts filmed a sound wave. Now, if you click on the article and look at and of course there's the picture you've got, I put in a still of that. But this is a wave pattern in the atmosphere made by something. It's not just a natural progress. Now, this thing was traveling hypersonic and left this pointy arrow Christmas tree looking path in its wake in the atmosphere. So what was it? Now, they don't know officially. The cameras did record it, and it was a real photograph, not doctored or anything. So was it a UFO? something like this cutting through the atmosphere to me sounds like standard technology, like an impulse-driven missile or perhaps a meteor coming in. But this is at such a flat angle that it's probably a man-made traverse of some vehicle traveling using. Well, they could be using electrolytic or anti-gravity type propulsion, but because of the wake it's leaving, this leads me to think that it's kind of a thrust reaction device, an aircraft or missile or whatever. But definitely an interesting photo. They found something that made these sound waves, these patterns in the atmosphere as it travel through it.
I don't want to sound stupid, but I'm going to anyway. Am I looking at the white? Is that, when you say atmosphere, are we talking clouds or are we talking?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
if you look if you go over the actual page article and look down about a third of the way, you'll see through the camera that had a camera over a limb, like a Canada metal rod coming out. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner the clouds with broken sky versus this cloud cover that was, kind of misleading because it's so perfect. But if you just scroll down to the thing, I guess about a third of the way down the page.
Yeah, sadly, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we can't do that because we're somehow blocked. So,
sorry. Well, anyway,
yeah.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah.
That's Express in the UK. I guess a lot of these places are putting, barriers up if you're not supporting as a member of their newspaper clientele or whatever. But anyway,
and we don't have we've got ad blockers because otherwise we'd take down our system. So we apologize. But I see. I get a lot of those here too. Anyway, in the upper left hand, let's see, of the image that you're looking at there. On my website there, go upper left hand in your mind and say, okay, what's above that? And you'll see that there's broken clouds. So it would tell you that this is a kind of a consistent cloud cover over the area where this high speed, whatever it was, zipped through our atmosphere. Weird, isn't it? Interesting, though. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, even the angle of it, I think it's around 22 degrees spread, is consistent with like when a boat goes through the water, it leaves a spread trail of a certain degree. Usually it's around 22 degrees. It's something moving through something else and creating waves, bow waves, which are separated. Those make those little branch-like shapes along the path there. And that's inertial curl or wave action from a bow of something moving mighty fast in the atmosphere.
I remember a day I got to watching videos of, what do they call that when the air comes off the wing of an airplane and it does those curls
They're usually drag curls.
Okay.
The skin of the aircraft slows down some of the air by hitting it and deflecting it, and the air curls around and meets itself. And it forms this wave, this local wave. But when you break the sound barrier, you punch through one of those waves, and you're ahead of it then. But it's a drag curl.
Okay.
The
only reason I brought that up was something like this that we're looking at. How long would that, if you were in an aircraft going across that? You know how airplanes have to stagger their takeoffs and landings because of the disturbance in the air, obviously. And in case people didn't know that, that's what happens. You just can't have planes taking off right behind one another because of the air currents. So how long would you have to?
Well, this one I wouldn't worry about as far as aircraft, because this is up above the normal cloud levels that the aircraft fly in.
Okay.
And this is why NASA thought it might be some sort of a spacecraft that produced this.
Okay. Yeah, you did say that. Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. But the disturbance in that, regardless, the disturbance there would last quite a while, I suspect.
Yeah, well, portions of it would. If you look at a lake where powered boats have passed across each other for several hours, and they're long gone and parked or wherever they're going to, you'll still see flat pathways in the lake surface produced by the waves that this boat's made. It's like that in the air as well. How long will this be resident in the atmosphere? I don't know the length of the space, and the shortage, how short the time was in the photograph. So I couldn't really make an accurate estimate how long that'll hang around. But it's.
Well, very interesting nonetheless. Excuse me, folks. I just want to mention one thing. Hey, folks, Black Friday's coming up. If you do your shopping then, I got a deal for you. EMPshield.com, EMPshield.com/Hagman, okay? EMPshield.com/Hagman. Use promo code Hagman for $50 off. That's EMPshield.com/Hagman. Use promo code Hagman, $50 off. Stan, I want to thank you for that. And I tell you what, people shopping Black Friday, you've got the ultimate sale there. On the screen, so it's good to know that. Hey, folks, hey, family listening.
Hey, there's another discount on top of your discount. Look at that.
I see that.
Holy cow!
Yeah, you're just giving things away now.
Yeah, well, that's 30% off the list. That's a good price. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they've got to use your code in that one at the coupon shop if they're allowed to use both of them. I think they probably do, but wow.
I'll tell you what. And thank you for coming up with, and I mean this, where would we be without you coming up with this? And I'm not trying to be stupid. You gotta start somewhere. And I want to thank Stan for his gracious gift of the $50 off the promo code, as well as the technology behind it. He thought of it. I mean, he created it. It's him and his team. It's good stuff. So thank you.
Well, I thank also my partner, Tim, who did 95% of the circuit design and stuff. The concept is one thing, but circuit design is another thing, knowing which parts will do what you want to and things like that. And then after that, you've got a team. Gosh, I think we've got 26 employees now in the factory. It's huge, and still dealing, with various government departments, kind of behind the scenes.
Man,
yeah,
that's quite the wow. No, and there's no underage slave labor being used there. There's no. It's not Nike or I'm sorry, did I say that? I'm not allowed to say anything like that. It's not a sneaker company or a basketball company or whatever. So
no, these are all good residents of Burlington, Kansas, and nearby cities. So just good folks. There are a couple other things here. The squad, the four members of AOC and Omar and the rest of them in the House of Representatives, they've been problematic. I've talked about it before they even got elected, that they were going to be a problem. And they certainly have proven to be so. Now, in slide 46, there's just a brief article about Ilhan Omar, and there's a picture over there on that slide. Now, the Florida court says here's a Democratic congressman is said to have passed information to Qatar, Qatar, the Middle East, which was subsequently handed over to Iran. Now, here we have an American now, naturalized American congresswoman who is passing secrets to our enemies. In my opinion, that woman and anyone who does that kind of stuff is committing treason and should be tried as a traitor, a treasonous traitor, and given the death penalty.
Amen.
I have no qualms with that at all. She's an enemy of us.
Yet we accommodate her and her culture, not religion. This is a cultural thing regarding the whatever she wears on her head. Come on, folks. I mean, that's you're exactly right, Stan, and it pisses me off to no end. And I'm sorry for the language, but it does.
Yeah.
That'd be like, well, it's just treasonous. And yeah, you're right. I was going to try to equate it to something, but no, it is what it is, and that's not right.
Well, I can only hope we last until the 2020 elections and these clowns are put out of office by the voters who see what they're doing. They are against us. They are in our House of Representatives, but they are enemies of ours openly doing things which are against the United States. They are not protecting the United States against clear and present danger, etc. They're not, really honoring the flag of the United States, the republic for which it stands. They are not doing this. They are our enemies and should never have been allowed to take office in our government. Never.
And if you look at how this happened, she was elected. I mean, look at where the district where she's from. That whole district was constructed from Somalian immigrants. Okay, and it's not representative of the United States. It's representative of the interests of a small group of immigrants allowed into this country, and I'm sure a lot of them illegally. Stan, what would happen, do you think, if somebody went? I mean, what you just showed there, that's criminal. So what would happen, do you think, if she was arrested?
Well, I'm sure there would be a backlash reaction by the Somalis that support her in our country and perhaps overseas as well. I'm more concerned about the ones that are on the land here, but you can expect that, and you can expect a bloody nose when you fight for what is right. And we have a president now then that is a scrapper, and I think he should take this on.
I do too.
I mean, legally he's entitled, and actually he's got to do that as a responsible president of the United States to weed out treason within our government. We cannot have fifth columnists in our government, especially handing over data to Iran, who's threatening nuclear war to Israel and to our troops, and possibly even over somewhere in the United States East Coast from seaborne missiles. I mean, this woman has got to go. She's not an American. She really is not serving our best interest.
No, I totally agree with that, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you're making this. I'm glad you're making a stand on this, because we need to, folks. You know what? We need to be more proactive. I think it's just me, and Eric and I were talking about this pretty much all day today. We need to be more proactive and demand results. Judicial Watch just came out with a report about the emails and Hillary Clinton emails. I mean, so many things. We still haven't addressed the lawlessness, and the lawlessness continues today. This, however, is beyond lawlessness. This is deliberate takedown. And imagine, would we have put up with this back? Oh, I don't know. During the Reagan administration, do you think?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
There it is.
No. I mean, we have gone so far downhill in this PC environment that we've let the enemy through the gates. The barbarians weren't at the gates. Now they are through the gates and amongst us. And that means that each of us individually must now be very responsible in speaking out and hopefully getting our government to do the right thing and return to sanity and get rid of people that are trying to kill us. I mean, this is all it amounts to. I don't care whether she wears a turban or not. If it's a she or a he or what, or a she-he these days. But, if they're doing the wrong thing legally, and need to be punished and, given a fair trial but punished, let's do it. Let's don't mamby-pamby around. Speak out at the polls when you vote and get rid of these Democratic infiltrators. They've come in as Democrats, not to blame the Democratic Party, but these people are using the Democrats as a base to bring down the country. So,
Exactly.
The Democratic Party has to organize itself and oust or censor these people so they can't do any more damage. I don't know what it takes. I mean, it's logical.
Well, maybe that's the problem. I don't know. Maybe it's too logical. But we can't have the enemy within destroying this country, and this is exactly what's happening. And imagine how Israel would feel. In this case, the government of Israel or the people of Israel. Man, what are you doing? You're selling us out. So anyway,
yeah. I mean, of course, they've got their own problems with the left trying to take care of Netanyahu and get him out.
Yeah,
the United States and Israel are considered to be little Satan and big Satan, being United States, by the Islamic terrorist factions in the United States, United States, but also in the Middle East. There are peaceful Arab Islamic congregations, Sunni type Muslims, but then the Shiites are definitely antagonistic and terroristic toward the United States and Israel. We have to draw that line so that not all Muslims are blamed for what some are doing.
Exactly. And I'm seeing the rise of anti-Semitic. Obviously, we want to temper our speech. Not all Muslims are strap wearing, bomb wearing, active or warriors, and not all members of not all people in Israel are stereotypical of the Jewish people. Help me out, Stan. I'm going to get in trouble here.
Of the class of Jews that are probably Khazars, European, which are, part of the world government thing. That's different than the Jewish folk in Israel and the rest of the world that are Sephardi, from their bloodlines and customs go back through Spain back to Israel after they were dispersed. They speak a different accent even on Hebrew. The Sephardi, the soft accent, the same accent used in the time of Jesus in the temple. So they are the true house of Israel, spread all over the planet. There have been others that have come into it through the Khazars. It's a long story, you know it already.
Yeah.
But part of a world government push, and it's. I hesitate to talk about it because I know that people will go off half-cocked and say all Jews are bad because of some that are not even really from, Israel. It's a synagogue of Satan. They are bad.
Stan, how do we stop that? I'm trying to be reasonable here, and I know you are too. How do we stop this? Because I just see it getting really nutty and out of control, and I mean that.
This is chaos in the world. Satan is behind it, has been organizing this for centuries, millennia, actually. But it's coming to a head now. And for those of us that have Jewish blood and those of us that help the Jewish community, the real Hebrew community, we're going to be targeted, if we're not already targeted, for helping to preserve the tribes of Israel, God's chosen people. You just have to realize that even the Bible says that they're going to be the synagogue of Satan. Beware of that one. That's not the house of Israel. You've got to be able to separate that in your mind. I mean, we send money as part of our tithe to Israel to help feed children, and some of them are not even Jewish, but
sure, some are Arab, perhaps. I would suspect.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And we're not trying to help the enemy. If you consider the Khazars the enemy, we are simply trying to help people that can't get food and shelter and jobs there, and who are just average people, not running a country, not trying to be a world government leader, any of that kind of stuff, just people. So we do support that side. My grandmother was Jewish, so I have a close connection to the community there, and I have a mezuzah on my front door lintel. Not that I always use it, but it is there for a purpose.
You know what my great-grandfather's name was? Can I say this? Am I allowed to? Okay. It's Levi. So
you and I, hey? There we go.
So
Holly and I are giving each other a present of this DNA testing this Christmas to just see what percentages are there. She part of her lineage is KOCH, Cook, which are from Germany, but what the Jewish connection is, we're going to see.
Wow.
I look, to me, it's a merit badge, that I was born into, and you were born into. So anyway, that's
it's fun to me. I don't know, genealogy. I've always had an interest in genealogy, and sadly, my there's not a lot of information on my mother's side. More so on my dad's side because they kept records pretty well. But anyway, I guess does that make me Jewish, by the way, if my mom's got some?
Well, look, to a percentage, yes. I mean, depending on what's on your father's side or your mother's side, it gives you certain privileges or rank in the Jewish community. The DNA testing is basically to show that you do have a blood connection to the house of Israel if it comes up that way. As I say, to me, it's a merit badge. To others, maybe not. But when Hitler was in power, if you had, a 16th Jewish blood in you, you were RS, in his opinion, went to the camps.
Yep.
So how much is enough to get persecuted? It's certainly not like Pocahontas and what her micropercent of Indian blood was.
Yeah, what the heck was that? Like some obscure. But by the way, I'm going to get emails on this, and there are going to be comments on this undoubtedly. Are you okay with the DNA testing? I mean, are you?
Oh, I thought about not doing it for a long time, but for Holly and I, we're known to have that affiliation. There's no secret about it. So for us, it didn't matter. For others that don't want to be, rounded up on their blood type, then maybe it's not wise to do a DNA test.
Okay.
That would be my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious because I know I'm gonna be reading the comments and just okay, well, Stan, why are you doing this? Why are you sending your DNA? Whatever.
Hey, they can say that, but my point is still the same. I'm already marked, and so are you.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. So for us, we can be curious and find out, but without adding to the threat to us anyway. We're already listed.
Yeah, we're right there. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I know what you mean. All right.
Yeah. So now, on slide 45, a bank collapse in China, $40 trillion debt heading to economic collapse, and the Chinese yuan crash. And if you click on the article, you'll see that at least 500 Chinese banks have been flagged already for potential collapse. Now, they own our big chunk of American debt, treasury bonds, right? So if they go down, who gets the treasury bonds? Who collects for them? That's 13% of the financial institutions of China are at high risk of collapsing. We're not an island. We are linked to them financially. And so we have to see what's going to happen to our banks. The bank where Holly and I bank, we just got a letter last week. It said after 23 or 22 years of whatever dealing with them, you're going to have to either go to one of our other branches in the city or to another bank because we're closing your bank here out here where you live. And it was a surprise to the staff as it was to us. So why are they cutting back expenses in this bank and other banks to get ready for this global economic collapse that will ensue when China goes down, or 13% of their banks go down?
Huh.
I brought this up because we're not alone all by ourselves on an island. We are linked to the world economy and to China hugely, bigly, as the president would say. So keep an eye on your banks. Check and see what the bank ratings are periodically on the site that rates banks, and see if you're like the banking Better Business type listing has downgraded your bank or is about to or whatever, to see that your assets are protected as long as we have banks and things that work like they used to.
Yeah.
Now, slide 44. It's not like a heavy factual thing, but the WeWork founder, Adam Neumann, was giving a blog, and he said that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Jared Kushner, and himself would save the world in his dialogue there. Basically, he was saying that any of the three of them, including him, obviously Neumann, MBS, and Kushner, know how to solve the world and have world peace. So I don't think that this guy Neumann could do it, but still, he's recognizing the fact that Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman are capable of bringing world peace in the Middle East. Anyway,
it kind of takes me back just briefly to the Arab Spring and how that started. When you were talking about Iran earlier, I know Iran, all that started back. How far back, I guess you want to go, but you go back into the 70s, you go back into the 50s, but more recently with the Arab Spring and the realignment of power. So I guess in more recent history, I'm thinking all of this now kind of goes back to the power realignment in the Middle East. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about any of this. I don't.
No, there's another thing too on our slide 48. If you get over to there, It's from breakingisraelnews.com. And it again underscores what is happening in the Middle East. A U.S. general hints at war with Iran as U.S. troops mass on the border. And then they quote Ezekiel 27:10. Men of Persia, Lud, and Put were put in your army, your fighting men. They hung shields and helmets in your midst. They lent splendor to you. And he's saying that the U.S. is preparing for war with Iran. This is, not maybe. They are preparing. We've got troops on the ground there, troops in the air, equipment in the Persian Gulf or Gulf of Arabia now. What does it take to tell people you better kind of prepare for war and what it does to your economy and your jobs and to your health? Just another thing that you put all these factors together. We're on the verge of war between Iran, the United States, and Israel. And Saudi Arabia may help as well, because Saudi Arabia is more like a Sunni-based Islam against the Shiite or violent, terrorist, aggressive Islam of Iran. And MBS, Mohammed bin Salman would lose no sleep over destroying Iran, because they've already attacked the Aramco oil fields a few weeks ago. And he's trying to get an IP listing, for the Aramco oil company at the same time this is all happening. So he would help the United States and Israel. So Iran may attack him further in toward Riyadh, either from their Yemen partners or straight across the Gulf.
Wow.
Everywhere you look, the signs are there, and the statements telling you from a high place in our governments, it's about to happen. It's about to happen.
Would you be surprised to wake up Thanksgiving morning or the day after and see something like a Strait of Hormuz incident or something like that?
No, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I woke up one morning and the news said, Damascus is gone.
Yeah, that's true.
Burned to the ground.
Gee, I wonder what made you think of that. Yeah.
I hate to be flippant about it, but because there's some good people, I'm sure, that live there. But overnight, Damascus has become a ruinous heap, the Bible says. And now Damascus is in Syria, but there's also been a lot of Iranian development of missiles and stuff in Damascus and around Damascus. So it could be attacked. It could also be destroyed by an act of God, because it sits in an area of volcanic activity. You see the black mounds of fizzled volcanoes all around. One of them may actually be right underneath Damascus and rise up and destroy it overnight. So whether it's an act of God or man, it's going to happen.
Well, with respect to the former, I was saying back in 2013, 2012 that around Benghazi, the time of Benghazi, that in my view, World War III would begin in Syria. And, it doesn't preclude Iran. In fact, it involves Iran. So anyway.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the location is just a location. Is it Iranian occupation of certain places here that causes it, or Russian involvement? Yeah, I think you're right that Syria is going to be the focus of the start of a nuclear war in the Middle East. That will be short-lived, mind you, for a time. But it's going to demand that Israel and the neighbors, and other countries sign a peace treaty and stick to it as far as the use of nuclear weapons, and agree to find a way to peace by dividing Israel even further. But anyway, it will start there in Syria. In fact, if you look at Syria and the Golan Heights, which is kind of semi-Syria, even though Israel now takes care of it, that was where the ancient kingdom of Og, the giant, and his giant people lived. And they were from hybrid intercourse between Nephilim and humans. Fortunately, all wiped out. But that area is a bad juju type area as far as, fallen angel type cohabitation with our women, making these hybrid beings. So you just got a bad feel about it.
I love your descriptive analysis on that. Thank you. Bad juju there, man.
Well, yeah. I have to laugh at times because it's just so terrible otherwise.
Indeed it is. And wow. One of these days, Dan, I hope hopefully not too long, I'd love to come visit you, and maybe you and Holly and even I know my wife was talking last night. We'd love to maybe go over to Israel, and have to have you as a guide, though. But
Yeah, I still have a few friends over there and places up near the Dead Sea. Sorry, not the Dead Sea. It's up to the Sea of Galilee, with apartments here that overlook the lake, the sea. They've been trying to get us to come over too for about 5 years now. But Israel. Oh wow, what a place! What a place.
Indeed. Well, my man, we're absolutely out of time. About 11 seconds before the top of the hour, I want to say thank you so much for your time and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
And what of it you get to experience, happy too.
Thank you. All right, folks,
All right.
that'll do it. Thank you, Stan. That'll do it.
Bye-bye.
We're out.